As we continue the month of June, we're going to continue talking about sleep. But before we get started, Dr. Jess, what is in your glass?
I have moved on from my smoothie and my coffee, and now I'm just sticking to water. I've got some fresh lemon in there to make it a little bit tastier, so I drink more. And so the goal is, this is actually my son's bottle, so it's typically a bigger bottle, but grabbed the wrong one this morning. That'll do. So I just have to refill it more often. So anyway, Dr. Bobbie, what's in your glass?
Plain old water as well. I'm nothing flavored or anything in it, just water, H2O.
Gotcha. We have a special guest with us, a good friend of mine. This is, I'm going to let her introduce herself, but first, Lauren, what is in your glass?
So I am a big tea drinker. So every morning I really enjoy a chai latte. And then I switched to a green kind of herbally type tea that I make with cold brew. So, but also, yes, it tastes good and makes me drink more of it.
Gotcha.
So yes, I'm Dr. Lauren Hyer. I am Dr. Jess and I go way back to our college years where we worked on our senior research project together. So we've known each other a good many years. But currently I am a pediatric orthopedic surgeon with Shriners Children's in Greenville, South Carolina, and do mostly lower extremity work.
Yeah.
So that is my background. I'm also the mom to two vibrant boys that are 3 and 5 years old. So my day job gets over only for my nighttime mom job to begin. So life is full.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that. I get that. So our boys are very similar in age. So I almost said your maiden name when I was about to like introduce you.
About to say my my college nickname. And
yeah.
I was just like,
so, yeah. This is Dr.
Uh,
and that's how you're my phone. And so
takes some getting used to. So yeah.
It still kind of stumbles out that, we get married and change names and things like that.
Right.
Yeah. So in this episode, what we're talking about is sleep. And we've talked about sleep in the previous episodes this month in reference to adults and how important sleep routine is, and physiologically the benefits of sleep, and how sleep really much improves how our bodies function neurologically, our immune systems, everything else. But what we really haven't covered is sleeping kids. And so the reason why we have Dr. Hyer on is that not only is she a physician, so she like kind of gets physiology, but then she's got the like real struggles of like, how do we get kids to sleep consistently and have them actually kind of wake up and starting their day to like function at their highest level? And it's not this like, oh yeah, like we go to bed every single night at the same time and we wake up every single morning at the same time and our circadian rhythms are exactly perfect and in sync. Because you know what happens? Like, people get sick, or like something really cool is going on, or like someone's visiting, or you're traveling. There's like every single obstacle that comes up. And so sometimes there's just like creative ways that we can still kind of help kiddos function and not be so black and white, but be okay with the gray. And so as long as we're trying and we have intention, then I think for the most part it all kind of works itself out. So I don't know if you would agree with that, Dr. Hyer.
I would totally agree with that. I think the two words that come to mind that are a little bit of an oxymoron when I think about sleep in my children is a flexible routine. So let me go into that. Flexible because as a physician and a dual working household, our no 2 days are exactly alike. So I need my children to be able to adapt to my schedule. Sometimes mommy comes home at 4 in the afternoon. Sometimes mommy doesn't come home until 7. And I really covet that time with them in the evenings because that's really the only time that I have with them. And so I want them to be somewhat decent human beings. But then I think routine is also key. That when bedtime does happen, we have pretty much the same routine. We brush our teeth, we read stories, we say our prayers, we sing silly songs, and then we go to bed. And so I've never been one for a strict routine. I've been more of a flexible routine that you will go to bed, and bedtime will look the same, but bedtime may happen just a little bit different times. And I think that allows us to have a little bit more adventurous lifestyle as much as you can with a 3 and a 5-year-old. That sometimes that looks like we're going camping, and I still expect you to go to sleep, or we're going to grandma's and I still expect you to go to sleep. And so those are things that in my family that we've incorporated.
Yeah. And I think I agree, like they do something very similar where there's not necessarily like bedtime is at this number, so like, sometimes it's like everything in the world has to end because like this specific time has come, and it makes it feel like, that FOMO comes into place. Like, the kids are like, no, I don't want to go to bed. Like, this is still going on. That's still going on. And so I think having that ability to kind of teach them how to pivot and say, like, here's the deal. Like, tonight we are going to stay up a little bit later because this is going on. And so then you still don't want to get them so riled up that they can't like then settle to fall asleep. So then the routine is still there. So, like brush teeth, we do warm showers before bed. We've got what's it called? Like the sound machine,
Yeah, us too. Yeah.
Yeah,
That kind of cues like bedtime has started. So
exactly, like the dim lighting, like all of that still helps to incorporate, even though like the time has shifted. And knowing full well if the time has shifted, that wake up might still be the same time in the morning.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think I think sleep is highly important in all of us, but especially in our children, because not only all of them is growing, mind slash brain and body, and hopefully they are maturing as little souls too. And I think sleep is when a lot of that maturation happens. And so I think most everybody knows that children need several hours more sleep than us adults. I think, and I haven't listened to all of the most recent episodes from you guys, but I think most adults need 8-ish hours of sleep, give or take, or mostly more give than take. Hopefully we're aiming to get 8 hours, but young children like babies, like neonates, they sleep, gosh, probably almost 20 hours a day, 18 to 20 hours a day. And then it still cycles. And I think it goes in a rhythm that when a child's experiencing more growth, that they need more sleep. So I agree with everything you've said, just that, in order to have that more flexible lifestyle, like that our children need to have. Yeah, it's not really a number. It's a as far as like what time they necessarily go to bed, but it's that they'll eventually, like, we're going to go to bed and we're going to get some good sleep. So
when I think about it, I know like how I feel when I don't get sleep. So imagine a child with a growing body with everything else going on, just needing that little extra, and then being a little grumpy if they don't get that sleep. I know I'm grumpy when I'm tired and stuff. So
absolutely,
in their little bodies.
And you gotta think, like, so much is happening in a child's body. Like, their growth plates are open, and so their bones are expanding. Like, their brains are just like, I mean, the amount of development that's happening in the brain is insane. Their immune systems are like learning rapidly what to do. So like the time that they are sleeping really does need to be quality. It needs to like have like a place where they feel safe, their bodies can actually relax and get those consecutive REM cycles. And then this is why kids, when they're young, still require naps, because they still need the allotted amount of time where they're getting that rest. And so as they get older, they don't need those naps anymore. They can get the amount of time just overnight. But I do think, like, if you're noticing that, it seems like, oh, my kid doesn't need a nap, but if they're getting real cranky in the afternoon or just a bit of a bear, like, oftentimes they might actually need a nap. They might have in a growth spurt.
I think kind of just like our American society is always wanting to like push things. There's this like Einstein preschools, like, let's make your kid a genius before the age of 5. And so I think that sometimes sleep gets drug into this hurry cycle, just a hurry culture. And so that's something that sometimes I get some raised eyebrows, but my 5-year-old still, most of the time, like I'd say 5 out of 7 days a week, gets an afternoon nap. And we've been, just as a dual working family, that's something actually we've been really slow to let go of, because when he gets that nap and then we come home, he actually is a decent, has gotten at least one REM cycle of sleep and is a decent human being for us when we get home. So then it makes dinner time a little bit more enjoyable. We do tend to have a later bedtime than some of my other mom friends of similar age kids. But I'm okay with that because I think we have, we get the balance and the reward of having a 5-year-old who is much more pleasant to interact with than he's on his very last thread and has nothing left to give us. So yeah, I think sometimes I agree with you, Jess, that yeah, as they get older, eventually they'll transition to the all nighttime restful time. But you know, I think historically kids napped in the afternoons older. It's been more probably in the last, I would guess, maybe 10 to 20 years of this push of like pushing them out of a nap at that 4 and 5 year age or earlier, even sometimes as part of just our kind of cultural move towards earlier maturation.
Right. Yeah, and I agree with that because like it's not every weekend that our 5-year-old will still take a nap. Our 2.5-year-old, almost 3-year-old, he definitely does. I will say, but we take a rest in the afternoons.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I'd say like we just kind of see because like sometimes with rest he's out. I mean out cold. And then other times it's just a nice rest, 30 minutes, and then he's ready to go again. So we give him that time to see what his body needs. Because if you ask him in the middle of like playing outside, hey,
yeah,
you need a nap? We'll be like, no. But if we come in, we take a shower after playing outside, everything relaxed, you know, come back in, and then I mean he'll be out cold. And I'm like, well, good thing we offered it. Because like his body needed that. And we just kind of don't realize what we need sometimes.
Yeah, and I love choices. I'm a big fan. I know we're primarily talking about children and sleep, but I think you make better choices when you get sleep. But I think back to just like trying to raise not just a young boy, but raise hopefully a young man one day or you know, a mature adult. I think some of that has to come in, you know, starting a little bit earlier of just like giving them choices. Like you do not have to, your body does not have to go to sleep, but you can choose whether you sleep or whether you rest. But those are your, you know, that is your choice. Right now, we're resting, and you can choose whether you rest quietly or whether you rest in a sleep. You know, your body chooses to go to sleep. But I think trying to give our kids a little bit of choice around that matter makes the resistance less.
I have a friend in every day, her girls, and they're old, maybe first grade. So first grade in kindergarten or first grade in like last year preschool. And every day they have like an hour that's the two of them in the middle of the day, they have to go each to their own room. And she doesn't care what they do. They can sit and read, they can take a nap, but she calls it their quiet time and like their relaxing time. And they have to just go chill for a little bit. And then everybody gets up and continues on. I just thought that was such a great, because the kids can then choose what they do. They just can't be rambunctious in their rooms, like something.
Yeah, and if as most kids are super rambunctious all the time, just giving them that quiet time to be still. It's just so necessary for them just to have a moment. Their bodies just need to come down. Their heart rates need to slow, and then they really can go back to their activity with full force.
Yeah. And there's like, I see a huge change in mood and demeanor and everything else. If that nap was actually needed, you're like, oh, wow, like you come out of that and it's just like a whole new person versus just the rest was needed. So yeah, no, I think all of that is just good. I think to have like some awareness as parents to say like, wait, their bodies are actually going through a lot. And especially if they're in a growth spurt or, you know, fighting a little bit of something or a lot of something, right? Anytime there's even a little bit of extra demand, like they're going to need more rest. And so what that looks like is, you know, potentially naps, potentially do start the nighttime routine a little bit early if you're noticing behavior changes. Like, man, like you're crying at the drop of a dime, like what's going on? So maybe we do need to start relax time. In our house, we call it relax time early. All the lights go off, you know, everything starts into like, it's not loud anymore. You know, we watch like one show, then we do teeth brushing, you know, everything just kind of eases in. But sometimes we need to start relax time a little bit early and forego something else. If behavior is coming out, because that's normally how we see it in our house is behavior. They don't want to be bad. Kids typically don't want to be bad. They're not trying to make bad choices. They're just so dysregulated, typically because of overtired. So
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would add one more thing to not just a growing skeleton, which just as an aside, we think most of a child's growth happens when they are sleeping or at rest, just due to the nature of the growth plate. Like when they're constantly running and pounding on their growth plates, it's not a really good time for a growth plate to try to grow. But when they're finally laying down and at rest, we feel like that's when children tend to grow. But I would also say right before a new milestone is achieved, like just take like riding a bike, for example, like we're trying, and it's just like he just can't quite put it together. He takes a nap, he comes out, he rides his bike. It's just amazing what the brain can do if just given the time to rest and put all the pieces together. It's almost like they practice it in their brain when they're sleeping, and then they wake up and they can put it all together. It's amazing. So yeah.
I love that you use that example. That is the exact example that happened at our house this weekend. So like we were practicing our two-wheel bike, and it was like, we started with like both of us were like helping push him on the bike, and like scared, all of that. And then we got to just like one person, but always holding on. And then, and we had rest in the afternoon. I did a bunch of meal prep, and then he got back up and he said, "I'm ready." I was like, "To ride your bike?" He goes, "I'm ready." I was like, "Right now?" He goes, "Yeah." So I ran alongside once and he said, "Let go."
Yeah.
Boom.
Then
Then
get in the way of that.
That's awesome.
boom, just like that. Yeah. So I love it. It was like, but we just took that rest. Hey, take your quiet time. I got to get some stuff done. Your brother's napping. And came back out just like, all right, that's what I needed. So
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Let's talk maybe just a little bit about what if you feel like your child's not sleeping well. So the anecdote in my house is I was all the way in my bedroom and I could hear my, at the time, 4-year-old snoring. And it wasn't just like a little snore, it was just like loud snores. And it was like it had, it was a progression, like didn't really notice it. I noticed it a little bit when he was 2, and then it just seemed to be getting worse. So we finally took him to the this being a physician, I peeked in his mouth. Now let me just be clear, like I just do bones mostly, so I know a little bit about the other stuff and then a lot about bones. But peeked in his mouth, I'm like, oh my goodness, those tonsils are huge. I don't know how any air is getting in and out. Took him to the ENT, and she agreed. I would say my encouragement to the parents out there would be that if you feel like your child is not sleeping well, despite routine, despite all these other things, those are situations where be their advocate. They can't voice to you saying like, "Oh, I slept terribly last night. I feel like I'm not breathing." They're not able to articulate that. But if you have concerns, those are things to raise to your pediatrician and work up further. We ended up getting his tonsils and adenoids out, and I would say within like 2 weeks after that, it was like we had a new kid because he was finally resting for the first time. And it kind of coincided with actually being able to potty train at night too, that his brain was finally getting the rest he needed, and his bedwetting went down dramatically. So
that's awesome. Yeah. When in doubt, ask for help. If something feels wrong. Like if it doesn't feel like it's right, like keep pushing until you get, solutions and answers.
Yeah. I know you guys have had some sleep medicine medical personnel on here, but that would be my other encouragement too, is like that might, if you're not getting where you need to with your pediatrician, maybe just ask for a sleep medicine referral to have your child evaluated. The incidence of obstructive sleep apnea is still pretty high, and I think it's understudied, so we don't really know like how many kids are actually affected, but the incidence is much higher than we probably would think it would be in little kids. So that would be my encouragement to the parents out there is, when in doubt, ask for help.
Yeah, I love it. Awesome. Well, Dr. Hyer, thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate it. Sleep in kids is just something that we don't want to like ignore. So we want to make sure we highlight it and show that there are all sorts of different struggles, but that's okay. So everything's going to be something you're just going to kind of have to work with it, figure out what works for your house, for your routine, and know that like, as long as you're trying, like things will progressively get better. So all right. Well, stay tuned because we've got more information coming up later. Thank you for listening to the episode today. If you would like to learn more about how Two Gals can support you, then join our Two Gals Insiders membership, which can be found at www.2-gals.com. Also, don't forget, follow us on social media. We're on Facebook as well as Instagram. Okay, everybody. Bye. Enjoy your week.